What's up, my guy? What's up, my girl? Welcome back to the Dani Flo Podcast. I'm your boy, Dani Flo. I'm a 28-year-old Catholic husband and father. This is where I share my philosophy of life with you. I don't try to answer the question, what is life? What I do is I share what brings meaning and purpose and value to my life, what makes my life significant, in hopes that some of those things you will also find significant. Today, I am joined again by my friend Quon. We recently did a podcast together about his experience with family court and the joy of his life, as he described it, being a father. Fatherhood is also important to me. But something else that he also experienced is struggles with mental health, and he's graciously agreed to share those experiences with us, just like he shared his experiences with family court. Quon, welcome back. And for those people that maybe didn't see the previous podcast, why don't you just tell us what you'd like us to know about you?
For the people that don't know me, my name is Quon. I go by Mr. Perseverance, Mr. Roll Living. I'm a father of four, 34 years old. I had to think about it for a second. Um, learning, learning more about myself. I'm learning more about my mental, some of the things I grew up on, some of the things I went through as a child, as an adult, and just it's a terrifying journey learning about this stuff. Like every time you think you figured out things, is another door that opens, another chapter that opens. And even going to therapy, I'm still like in my early childhood years when I'm in therapy, just talking about my upbringing and stuff.
hmm So you said that every day or every so often a new door opens and you discover something new about yourself. I guess, when did you first get interested in mental health, or like when were you introduced to the topic, or how did mental health like come into your life?
It's not something that you want to get introduced to.
Mhm.
I think I went through some years where I was kind of lost. I had some moments in my life where I didn't know what was going on with me. Like
Mhm.
I used to be up for days. Like I couldn't sleep for days, and I remember just masking my pain like with alcohol, women, um, partying, and I remember just the first time I realized that something was wrong with me was I used to always sit in my basement in the dark, and I just wanted to shut myself off from the world. This is maybe 8, 9 years ago, and it was just like a feeling you have when you just drained all the time, and that's what made me just like wake up to and say, "Man, I need to figure out what's going on." As far as the
Mhm.
therapy part, when we talk about chapters and what you open a new chapter every session, I broke it down to you before how when you go into therapy, it's like they may ask you a question about what is your earliest memory from your mother, and once you start answering that question, you kind of automatically drift into another subject, but it's related to what they're asking you. So it continue to open chapters, and you never
Mhm.
really finish the chapter they ask you about. It's a hard process to explain. Like I think most people got to go through it to understand, but it's a scary feeling, man. Just knowing you going through all these chapters in life and you still lost half of the time.
Wow. So in those moments where, like, you said that you would be you wanted to shut yourself off from the world and like sit in the dark, like, when you wanted to come out of that, because this is based off of your experience, and like you said, this is not something that you want to experience. So it was, at first, it must have been unfamiliar, I guess. How did but you knew something wanted to change, so how did you know to, I guess, look into your own mental health? Did you just kind of intuit, like, this is not healthy?
Um, what made me start going to therapy was
Mhm.
um, the feelings I had. Like they wouldn't go away. Like just feeling I mean, you can have everything in the world. Like you can have a great life, Your kids can be healthy, you can be healthy, but feeling like something's missing. So I was dealing with at the time I was dealing with depression. I mean, it's a word that a lot of people throw out there. So I dealt with depression a lot, and I knew the main thing I dealt with was anxiety. Like even to this day, I deal with anxiety bad, and I'm kind of like OCD about things. So like what made me go to therapy was I was like something was missing. I knew my girl would complain, my ex would complain, my mother would complain. Like, man, something's not right with you. Like, so I just had to go to therapy and learn like what's going on. And once I did, I felt like I was too smart for therapy. That was a problem. As a black man, it's embarrassing to admit you're going to therapy. I feel like going to a therapist, she would basically tell me stuff that I kind of already knew about myself, but it was a lot different once I went. Like she just, it was just, I had to pick therapists too. Like I went to 3 different therapists because you got to kind of pick what works best for you. If that make any sense? It's a process, man. It's a long process. It's crazy. It's tough, man.
Okay, so that was another. So okay, so you, besides these moments where you wanted to close yourself off from the world and sit in your basement alone in the dark, you also had people like your ex, like your fiance, and your mother, I guess maybe say you're not acting like yourself. So that was kind of maybe like a clue that you needed to talk to someone.
I put it like this: everything you do, there's a reason you do everything you do. Like the way you react to situations. I always kind of had. I mean, most people view it as anger issues. I look at it more like I held things in. So I reacted based on how somebody responded to certain situations. So I would hold things in for a long time, and then when I snap, I would snap, and it was no winding me back in. So my mom always, I mean, playing sports, that's the easiest way to figure out if people got anger issues or like anxiety or whatever. But my mom used to always be on me about it, like you gotta get that looked at, you gotta get that checked out, like something's not adding up, or why you a snap like that. Like when I snapped, it went from level 1 to level 5. So I wanted to be better for my kids. Like I never really snapped at my kids, but I knew I didn't want to be that angry person all the time. Like I wanted to figure out why I was so angry, even if there was no reason for me to be angry for that day.
Okay, so you mentioned anxiety and depression. So was the anger like tied to that, to the anxiety that you were like feeling and the depression you were feeling?
It's all kind of tied together, man. Like, okay, the depression was when I was sitting in my basement in the dark. Like I had a great life. You got to think, you have a great life. You have a family. You have all of the material things you want. And I couldn't figure out why I was in this sunken place all the time. Like sitting in the dark is not normal. Like the whole day, you just sit in the dark. You don't want to be around nobody. I didn't understand what depression was. Like it was just, it's tough to explain, man. Like the anxiety, I'm gonna get back to the depression. The anxiety is not being able to enjoy the moment. Like you always worried about something. You antsy about stuff. You can't stop moving. It's so much stuff that is tied to this stuff. It's a mess for the most part, man.
So yes, so then so you knew you didn't want to be like that angry person, right? So like, was the anger kind of just like a symptom of that you weren't, or that not that you, but like if a person reacts angrily, kind of like how you were describing, they go from a level 1 to a level 5 without any apparent cause, is that like a symptom that something is not well mentally? Like their mental health is like off, something, they need to talk to someone?
I think everybody need therapy. I mean, you gotta understand, like you lock away things in your memories that define who you are. So like for me, the anxiety was like just being restless so much. Always, I couldn't just enjoy the moment. Like I think the definition of anxiety is just like you always worrying about stuff and having fear. I think a lot of it was from my upbringing in my neighborhood I grew up in. Like when I explained in the last podcast, it made me always nervous about everything, and I just couldn't. I think that affected a lot of my relationships too, because I looked for the worst in everything. Like the relationships I was in, my friendships, I always look for the worst.
Mm-hmm. So when you started going through this journey, is that when you learned that anxiety and depression are like mental health issues?
I think those just are the two of the main ones that everybody know.
Mm-hmm.
You got so many different. You got PTSD. You got postpartum. There's so many things that ties to mental health. I think those two are just the most common that most people deal with.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure, like, even speaking to you, I'm pretty sure you have your days. You may not, but everybody have their days where they just in that funk and they don't know what's wrong with them. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's normal. I think we all got some type of mental health that we need to work on. That's why I think therapy is good for everybody.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. So like one of the things that I've talked to about my wife before we started recording, you and I were saying how this is like a new topic and research is still a new topic or a hot topic, but either way, research is still like developing in real time. One of the things that I've noticed now that I'm older, and I've talked to my wife about this, is like sometimes I get like random mood swings, like
Yeah.
and I have to tell her when I'm like feeling that way because I know that like I just have to get through the day and like maybe the next day I'll be like fine, like I kind of just have to like keep going through the day and then go to sleep, and then usually the next day it's it's gone. But like whenever I have a mood swing, I have no idea where it like came from. Like the best way that I can describe it, because the words aren't coming to me, is like it's kind of like when someone says, "Oh, you woke up on the wrong side of the bed this morning," kind of like kind of like that. But I know that it's more sophisticated than that. I just don't know the proper way to describe it. And I think you're right. I think on top of like mental health, and I do see depression and anxiety, um like the talk about it, I feel like the temperature is being like turned up on it, and we're looking at it like a lot closer. So I mean, I guess, are these, how do we know that they're like mental health issues and not like emotions, or like emotions and mental health, is that just all tied together?
We you can't never tell if you know or not. That'd be basically discrediting somebody's emotions. So by us saying how can we tell, basically if a person commits suicide,
Mm,
because everybody just waved them off when they said they was depressed,
mhm,
then comes back like that person maybe really was depressed. So when somebody tell me they depressed or they're dealing with anxiety, I talk to them about it. Even though, I mean, it's an easy cop out now. Even if you make a mistake in life, you can say you was depressed or anxiety or PTSD. But I would never like blow somebody off and what they're feeling because I'm not them and I don't know what they've been through.
mhm.
You know what I mean? It's an easy
Yeah.
topic to wave off, you know?
Yeah, I guess that really, I think that's a great point, and I think that really makes your point that it's really complicated because of what you just said. So this is this is a real issue, and it can affect anybody, right? Because you already said that you think everyone should go to therapy, but at the same time, like you said, sometimes people use it as a cop out, like you said. So it's hard to know what's real and what's not, and at the same time we're still learning about it. So that's why it's, yeah, I can see why this is really complicated.
Um,
But I mean that's good, that because I guess you're right too, like the only way to, I guess, figure out if someone is really having a mental health issue is by talking to them, or having
yeah,
them talk to a therapist.
yeah. I mean, who's comfortable talking to their friends about something they're feeling too? Like your friends are probably gonna judge you or blow it off. But
Mm-hmm.
like it's bigger than just anxiety and depression. Like it's the PTSD is to me probably the most. To me, I honestly think it's the most common thing for people that grow up kind of like me. Um, like your neighborhood affects you a lot. What you go through affects you a lot. Like just nightmares, images, flashbacks to what you go through. Like I didn't even realize once I started learning about mental health, and I had my first experience learning about a flashback when I realized I was in a drive-by that I totally blocked out my whole life. And then I remember a rapper made a song and he talked about his PTSD, and it took me back to a moment I was in a drive-by, but you kind of block bad things out like that. Like it's weird how it works, man. It's just it's a trauma basically. You know, it's a trauma that you've
Mm-hmm.
been through that you don't want to remember anymore.
Mm-hmm. So I think I think that's a good I think that's a good point or a good place to bring up, like you just said, that you think people have PTSD, they might not know it, and something might trigger it. Something might trigger a thing that they have blocked from their past for it to come up, and it's like a trauma. And then you also said not a lot of people want to talk to their friends about this. Why do you think that is? Why do you think, like, that someone might not want to say, "Hey, I was listening to this rap song and it reminded me of something from my past, and it's making me feel some type of way, like some type of like unhealthy way. Like I don't know what to do with these feelings."
Um, it, that's people judgmental.
Mhm.
Talk about mental health right now. I had a discussion on Facebook earlier today. I mean, people talk about mental health, you get viewed as looking crazy because you openly talking about it.
Mhm.
Like when we grew up, we were around the same age. I think I'm a little older than you,
Mhm.
but anybody that you knew that had some mental disorder, they was a crazy person in the family. So why would
Mhm.
anybody want to talk about something where people go view them as being crazy or not stable? Like
Mhm.
in my opinion, I think the people that's open about things, those are the people I want to be around. They're
Mhm.
they're they're aware of their traumas and they're working on trying to get it better compared to somebody that don't want to learn about their traumas. A lot of people don't
Mhm.
want to learn about their traumas because they're scared. Like it's a scary process, man.
Yes.
Like every single day, man. Like I'm in a like from morning to time I go to sleep, I'm either talking about something with mental health with my fiance, a friend, another person dealing with it, my cousin that's a therapist. It takes a toll on you, man. Like physically and like wise, man. Like it's a tough place to be in. Like it's not something I wanted to learn about. Like it's just something I kind of got through into by me learning about myself. And now it's kind of I talk about it, so a lot of people come to me about it now.
Mhm. So I think that's a good point. Yeah. So growing up, if something was wrong with you mentally, you were seen as crazy, and we've kind of carried that to today. Um, but it seems like you're having a decent amount of conversations through your Facebook and through people like in real life. Do you think that, do you think social media is making the judgment worse? Like in your experience, do you think the social media is making the topic of mental health better or worse? Because it sounds like in Facebook, you're having some there's positive things happening because you're having these conversations with people that maybe in in real life they don't have anybody to talk to.
I think it's a little of both, man. Like,
Mhm.
I mean, you got to think social media is so judgmental. Like, just look on a post like when a celebrity comes out and they say that they were struggling, so they said something off topic.
Mhm.
What do people? What's the first thing you see people do? They bash him, like he
Mhm.
crazy, crazy. I can get a celebrity that I remember a couple years ago. You know the singer Tyrese.
Yeah.
He went on there talking about what he was going through. He cried and he said openly, like, "Man, I'm struggling. I'm struggling. Like mentally, I'm struggling." And the
Mm-hmm.
first thing people say, he crazy because he crying on camera. Like, people don't fake that stuff, man. Like, some people, I guess, in reality, some people may fake it, but people not faking them type of emotions on camera trying to get attention. Like, this guy's a millionaire. Why would he be faking something like that? I think
Mm-hmm.
social media is so judgmental, and 99% of the people on social media are struggling with some form of mental health, or otherwise you wouldn't be on social media getting satisfaction off a like. Like,
That's
if a
true.
person don't get a
Yeah.
like, how do they feel? So what does that equate to? Like, you struggling with something, obviously, because if you get depressed about somebody not liking your picture or whatever, what is that relating to? You
Mm-hmm.
know, it's a
Yeah.
process, man. It's easy.
Yeah, I think that's true because, like you said, Tyrese. I mean, and Tyrese is a relatively. I feel like do you think Tyrese is like a little bit older than us? Maybe, like maybe in his 40s.
I think you got to be about 40 at the most.
Yeah. So I mean, he probably grew up with the same stuff that you were talking about, like when we were growing up. If you had, like, if you cried in public, or if you said, "I think something is wrong with me mentally," like people look. He's got to be aware of these stigmas for him to like come out and talk about what he's struggling to. Like, he had to have known this already. So if he posted it, it's because it's real, not because like he's trying to get, I don't know, what would he even what would he even get from that? Like sympathy, empathy? Like
Yeah.
he
People
wouldn't.
people don't understand, man, what people going through. Like, a good line I like to use, man, is I don't know how to pronounce the word all the way properly. I think it's called impit or something. Most people consider themselves impit. I think that's how you pronounce it.
Mhm.
And it's totally false. I think most people kind of trauma bond to each other, or like you trauma bond to somebody that's going through a similar situation as you, as far as the pain or what you came through. And that's kind of where I relate to a lot of people that's broken. Like, I used to always wonder why I attract broken people. And
Mhm.
once I started learning about myself, I realized I was so broken. So it's like,
Mhm.
even with my fiance, we kind of trauma bonded with each other because we both were coming out of, she was coming out of a bad relationship and I was going through a bad relationship where I was coming out the ending. I ain't even gonna say bad relationship. I was coming out of a situation
Mhm.
where I was broken. So we kind of bonded through our trauma. And I think that's what most people do. So when I see like somebody like Tyrese or a celebrity going through something, I don't be so fast to judge them because I kind of been there and I understand what they're going through. And I hate the social media. Like, I think it's immaturity of people that don't want to acknowledge their own traumas. So they gotta
Mhm.
use like somebody else's trauma as a hee hee ha. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Like, it's a laughing moment for most people.
Mhm. And that, but like you said, it's a laughing moment for most people, but they probably don't know that they've got some mental issues that they need to face as well.
Man, it's people don't want to face their own mental issues.
Mhm.
I just made a post a couple minutes ago. I was like, dealing with what I deal with and talking about it so openly, I get a lot of criticism. I get a lot of opinions of people trying to tell me about who I am or who my emotions or how I act. And I sit back and listen because most people, if they get if you do people how they do you as far as telling you about yourself, they
Mhm.
can't take that. I know how it feels and I deal with it because the feeling I know that comes from it. So it's like people not ready to hear their own traumas, man. Like, so that's what is a saying. There's always truth in jokes. So
Yeah.
most people joke with other people because they don't want to hear their own traumas and stuff.
Mhm. And yeah, and then sometimes, so that's a great point because then sometimes people can't take jokes about themselves,
Yeah,
you know,
I deal
because
with it, man. I deal with it every day.
like you said, there's a little bit of truth in every joke. So like if someone makes a joke at your expense, it might have a little bit of truth of like some trauma that you're dealing with, and you don't wanna deal with that, or you don't wanna like dissect it and open up what is.
It's weird how it works. It's weird, man. Like, man, learning about your own traumas, I tell you, man, it's scary, man. But it's like, as you learn about your own traumas, you see people that have some stuff, like some baggage, and they'll tell you about your stuff, and you can feel their stuff. You can feel it, and you won't necessarily, I won't tell nobody about themselves, on my opinion, unless they ask.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of people that's dealing with a lot of bad trauma they got tied up, they will criticize you to death. They will tell you everything about you because they're hiding their own traumas. It's a field, man. I'm learning still.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, man. I'm close to graduating, and I get some of my family members, some people close to me, tell me to go into the field. But it's still like, I'm like, man, that drain you get from it, man. It's like, I don't know if I can deal with that on a daily basis, man. Like,
Yeah. So you say you're still learning. How long have you been like on this journey? Because I think in the last pod you mentioned that was it around the same time that you started dealing with family court, or had it been a little bit before, a little bit after? How long have you been on this journey of trying to improve your own mental health and deal with your own trauma?
Personally, I've been going to therapy for probably maybe 5-6 years.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't take therapy serious at first.
Mm-hmm.
I told you, I thought I was going to therapy, but I was like, man, this person can't help me. You know, I'm black, man. I'm coming from the hood. So I was like, man, this person can't help me, man. They don't know what I've been through. And so once I went to 3 different therapists to try to learn where I fit in at. And once I just kind of gave in a little, I learned, like, man, this person, they know what they talk about. And when I talk to my cousin as a therapist, one thing I learned from her is most therapists have been through some of the worst things possible. They kind of know they kind of relate to things a lot more because they've been through some bad moments in their life. So I say maybe 5-6 years, but I've been going hard, digging deep into myself for maybe 3 years. I think that my case I went through a lot of painful truths in my own custody battle. Mm-hmm. Even with my ex-wife, I went through a lot of painful truths, and that kind of made me want to learn more about myself, even more.
Mm-hmm. So it's been about 5-6 years, and then the court case has been going around 3 years, and that kind of amplified this. You have a cousin that's a therapist. You saw multiple therapists to, I guess, find the right fit for you, and you've mentioned they've kind of been through, most therapists kind of are at the same time dealing with their own stuff, and you said that you think everyone should see like therapists. So I mean, is that what other therapists do to stay on top of their own mental health? Is like they themselves have a therapist that they go to? It's like therapists have, I guess, what is a person that, so you have a therapist. What are you to the therapist? You're not a client, right? It's not like
my therapist. I'm a client.
Okay.
But I'm pretty sure my therapist has their own therapist. I go to a woman. It's easier for me to talk to women. My best friend is a woman. Besides my fiance, my best friend is a woman, and best friend is 4th grade. So it's easier for me to talk to women. But I had men before. And one thing I get from my cousin, she tells me, you would never know my cousin. I put it like this. Being in learning about mental health, you're going to come off as real judgmental because you see other people's traumas a lot. You feel them a lot. And you're going to come off as like you judging them. Even if you don't say nothing, people go either think you cocky or you judging them. But in reality, you just kind of know what they're dealing with, or you kind of know what if they're dealing with depression, anxiety, PTSD, or whatever. You kind of get a sense of what they're dealing with or what they're hiding from. So I give a good example. I don't know if you know I can't pronounce his name. Charlemagne,
Charlemagne the God. Yeah.
Oh, I call him CT. I can't pronounce his name. Most people either hate him or love him because he comes off as super judgmental because he'll tell somebody straight to their face, you're hiding behind this mask because you're talking about somebody else hiding behind the mask because you're low self-esteem. Like you're ashamed of how your life is. You're hiding behind traumas. I don't know if you ever watched him.
Yeah, I've watched some of his stuff. Yeah.
What opinion you get from him?
I gotta tell you the truth. So, like, when I first heard of him and saw some of his videos, he did come off to me as cocky. But the more videos that I watched from him, there are times that he, like most recently I've watched videos with him and Gary V, and like those interactions, I really like those interactions. I was really interested in the interview he did with Angela Staton King on the Breakfast Club. I watched that interview, and there's two other hosts with him in the Breakfast Club. In that interview, I thought he did the best out of the three, because I really felt like he was listening to her, and like whatever she would say, like I felt like he would like repeat it to her accurately. So what I feel about him like today is I feel like he's definitely a good listener, and I feel like he, like at times he does say very insightful things. But when I first started watching his videos, I was like, man, this guy really like yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a love-hate thing, you know, because he basically only thing, he's not a therapist. He just learned about his own traumas, and he openly talks about he didn't go to school with being a therapist. He's a face of Black men mental health, and one thing he does is he speaks his truth, and he speaks a lot of people truth that are afraid to say it. Like, so if you didn't know me and you look at the way I pose or the way I talk, it's going to be offensive, because I talk openly. I talk about men's rights. I talk about father rights. I talk about healing. I talk about speaking up for yourself, defending yourself. So most people want to fit in that perfect bubble in the world where they're hide behind their traumas. I don't hide behind my traumas anymore. I did for a long time, so I kind of stayed back a lot. But that's why I say going to family court. That's where I say, you know what? I'm not hiding behind my traumas no more. Like I'm gonna speak openly about who I am, and that's all it is about mental health. Like mental health is like it just I'm comfortable in my own skin now. If that make any sense? Like nobody can shame me for who I am. Like I speak openly about my own struggles, my healing process, because I'm comfortable who I am. And that's where CT talk about, like, he's comfortable who he is. A lot of people say crazy things about him all the time, but he don't let it bother him no more.
So do you think that's another layer on top of it? So in your experience, you've learned that everyone has mental health struggles. Some people know it.
I think so.
Some people don't, right? But on top of that, the people that have identified it, like Charlemagne the God and you and other people, right, when they're open about it, so all of a sudden there's like this, like, I guess for lack of a better word, like a stigma about it. Like you said, like, oh, Quon talks about father's rights and he talks about sticking up for yourself. Like they find that offensive, but the reason that you're doing that is because it's for your mental health. You're on a mental health journey.
Let me give you a couple of examples of guys at the world label that's crazy because they spoke openly about who they were, and they got shunned out of the spotlight. So do you remember Ricky Williams, the football player?
No.
So he was the best football player in the early 2000s. He was running back for the Saints, the Miami Dolphins. He gave his career. He was the best player in the NFL. Walked away from his career over mental health. He came back maybe 5 years later. He was a good player still, but he walked away from all the money because he was worried about his mental health. He was like, you know, the NFL, he smoked a lot of weed. He was like, the NFL, I'm getting beat up every day, and they expect me not to go home and like, just like kind of figure out who he was. Like he was losing himself. Look him up after this show. Another guy is Brandon Marshall. You know what Brandon Marshall is? He got a podcast called I Am Athlete.
I've heard that name sounds familiar, but I'm not sure.
His life, but for the most part, he reminded me of myself a lot because, like my fiance always say, you say a lot. She tell me about me. She said you say a lot of stuff that most people are afraid to say. Sometimes it gets you in trouble. Sometimes people understand, which I agree with. I say a lot of stuff that privately I get a lot of messages for. That's like they say, man, thank you for saying that. I want to say that, but I don't want to get like kind of attacked for. Publicly, I get attacked for a lot of things I say. So I guess he got diagnosed as being bipolar. I never got diagnosed as being bipolar. But a lot of
And that's, sorry for interrupting, but that's also a mental health thing, right? Bipolar. So far, the examples that we've kind of been throwing out are anxiety, depression, bipolar, PTSD. There was another one. Oh, postpartum.
Postpartum. It's so many. We can go on and on. Like there's a lot of stuff that deals with mental health that it's so new still. Like, okay, the guy had hit me up today. He was like, Instagram. He was like, his doctor gave him pills and stuff. And me personally, I'm not a doctor. I'm learning about mental health. I'm not a therapist. I say I would figure out my trigger points before I take any pill. I'm gonna learn what triggers my anxiety, what triggers my depression, what triggers my anger, what makes me go off the wall. He said, what would you recommend? I said, look, I'm not your doctor, but that's what I recommend. Learn who makes you like that. Learn what makes you like that. I ask the question, why? Any conversation I have, and if I snap, I say, why? What moment in that conversation did I snap? Why? What was said? Why? Why was it said? And I ask myself, why did I snap? Or why did I go on my shell? What made me, feel that way? So that's the best thing I can recommend for anybody to do is ask yourself why. What in that moment made you and why? You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. Like if you act maybe in a way that you didn't normally do, you kind of have to reflect and say, at what point in the conversation or at what point in the situation did this trigger me to, I guess, not be myself?
Yeah.
Am I putting that? Is that putting that right?
Why did it trigger me?
So you were before I interrupted you, you were talking about. Oh man, I lost it.
Sorry, man. I apologize.
Yeah, no. I got too excited. I was like, before I lose it, I'm gonna ask him, and then I made us both lose where we were at. But okay, so that's interesting right there, because you said that from everything that you've learned and in your experience, before you commit to taking any medication, you kind of want to learn your triggers first. And as you were saying earlier, you think that everyone should kind of maybe see a therapist. Like that's kind of the only way to learn that, right? By going and talking to a therapist. I guess maybe the only other way is kind of like the way that you're doing, is just doing a lot of research.
I mean, that's why I try not to walk on a lot of therapists' feet, because I mean, I'm getting my degree, but I don't know if I'm gonna do it in mental. I'm in the process of getting my degree for human resources, but I don't know if I'm gonna go get my master's in mental health therapy or whatever. So I try not to walk on a lot of therapists' feet, because I'm friends with a lot of therapists, and like I do my own studying. I mean, they're getting the same books I get, so I kind of learn. I learn myself, plus what I apply from my therapist, the shadow, kind of like it's how to describe it, like you learn as you're going through the process, and you just pick up and take what your therapist teaches you. They give you exercises to do. Like one thing I learned to do was write down my emotions, and I'm not great at this yet. As you can tell how I post, I'm not great because I'm emotional. I use my feelings a lot with a lot of situations, and it can get me in trouble sometimes. But it's just different exercises you learn over time.
Yeah, I think that's super interesting to me, because I'll tell you why. So that's interesting to me because like me as a man, right? Like I feel like growing up, and I can't think of any examples off the top of my head, but it's like you were saying, jokes. There's always like truth in jokes. I feel like there's a common joke about men that like men aren't emotional, that like we forget anniversaries. We're not, after we I guess after we kind of get married, we stop being romantic. Like little stuff like that. But on top of that, like you say you're going for human resources, like my major is like philosophy. Within like the philosophy world, there's also like the the stereotype that philosophers are too in their head and they're like no emotions. And so like I kind of got like both going on. But when I look at your posts, you talk a lot about, I don't want to say you talk a lot about, but I've noticed that sometimes like you say, oh, you know, men aren't supposed to be, there's a stereotype that men aren't supposed to be emotional. I think that's like a little bit different than what I'm saying, because like I'm saying that we kind of get labeled as not emotional, and like I feel like you're saying like men do have emotions, but when they express them, they get like backlash for being emotional, right?
It's the truth. A lady today messaged me and said, it's so nice to see that it's getting normalized for men to be able to talk about mental health and emotions. And I said, no, it's not. It's not getting, it's normalized to talk about mental health, but not being to talk about mental health, because still to this day, a man is not supposed to be emotional by society. But people label it wrong. Like, the thing is, what do people want from men? Like, do they want us to be men and masculine all the time? Or do they want us to have some emotion and be masculine with that mix? Now, if I'm too masculine, I mean, I'm toxic, but if I show too much emotion, or if I show any little emotion, what am I labeled as? So it's like, I guess it's a balance, but at the same time, it's like, whoever made that who made the stereotype that men can't talk about their emotions or their mindset or their mental state? Like, I think a lot of men go through life so broken, and they live with it so long. It's like they deteriorate over time. They're their own worst enemies over time because they don't open up.
Well, earlier today you were talking about how you got your cousin who's a therapist, right? She's a woman?
Yeah, she's a great therapist in our city, man. She's dope. Like,
And then you were saying that your personal therapist is also a woman, your best friend. Like, do you and then you described yourself as an emotional man. Do you think maybe that's a little bit why I'm not gonna say I'm the least qualified person to psychoanalyze you, but you know, I find this interesting. Like, do you think maybe that's why it's easy for you to talk to women, because like men probably aren't used to, like, if you say something emotional to a man, he might be like, what am I supposed to do with this? Like, I don't know how to, or I'm not supposed to be emotional back or something. Or what do you think about that? I don't know if I made any sense.
that's really it. The first two people I went to were men. I feel like they had dry personalities. I think women are more in tune with their emotions. I got a couple buddies that go deep into mental health, and we had great conversations, man. Like, most of my I'm a conversation guy, as you know.
Yeah.
Most of my conversations are about mental health or parenting. So it's like, I don't think it's just, I think it's a field that more men don't go into. I think women have the patience to learn, and
That's a big one.
you know, like, how many men, you know, okay, human resources. I had some interview questions I made a post, and I got maybe 30 people comment on it, and only 2 were men. So it's like, men don't take the time to go into learning about the human mind, or how the human, how humans, how people communicate. I think men don't have the patience for it. So it's like, more women are into mental therapy, mental health. So it's like, it's still a stigma that men don't understand. We got to get into it to help other men. Does that make any sense? Like,
that does make sense. And I think that's so, like, that's interesting that you brought up that most of the conversations that you have are on mental health or parenting, for like people that didn't watch our last podcast together, which was great. You know, you describe like being a father as like the joy of your life, and but then in this podcast you're talking about how like everyone has traumas and stuff like that. So like, I mean, mental health should be super important for parents, right? Because like you were saying earlier that like you didn't want to be an angry person like for your kids, you know what I'm saying? But then at the same time, like, is the like like, can we take the desire of like wanting to be a good parent and a good father, like, can that cause us like mental health issues?
it can, because you can be too hard on your kids also. You can some people try to live through their kids because of their childhood and their PTSD. I know you heard about that before. Like, I don't know if you ever seen the movie Mommy Dearest, I think it's called.
Mm-mm.
And she basically lived through her daughter it's an old movie. It's like black and white, I think.
Mm-hmm.
She kind of abused her kid, was hard on her, tough on her because she lived through her kid. And so your parenting style and your parenting can affect your kids based on your own mental health issues, your PTSD, your depression, your anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
Man, there's so many layers in this, man. Like it is. Have you ever seen American Horror Story, man?
So which one?
American Horror Story.
American Horror Story? No, it's a series, right?
It's a series.
But the episodes are based on real life, I think.
No, it's not based on real life,
Okay.
but I think everything has a little truth in it. Like a lot
Mm-hmm.
of the episodes are based on. I remember the best one I think I watched was where the mother was basically living through her kids, and she was
Mm-hmm.
forcing them basically to do things that she wanted to do as a kid. Like that's trauma right there.
Mm-hmm.
Like your kid may not be interested in sports,
Yeah.
but you living through your childhood, like because you had some bad years as a kid, your parents didn't let you do something, and you're forcing your kids to do it. That's a trauma. That's a trauma response right there.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, I mean, your parenting can play a major effect on your kids, man. That's the one thing I didn't want to do. Like, do I want my daughters doing cheer? I don't, but I'm not gonna stop them because that's what they love.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
you can tell.
Yeah, like I'm not gonna force them to do what I want them to do. My son want to play the piano. He want to do whatever he want to do. I'm gonna support him because I don't want my misfortunes in my childhood to affect his or my daughters. So that's the perspective I get from as a parent in mental health and trauma. Like you don't want to put that on for your kids.
What was that football player's name that left in 2000 and then came back 5 years to deal with his mental health?
Williams. He don't get enough credit for it, man. He don't get enough credit for. He walked away at the top of his career. And then, I don't know if you ever hear about the NBA players that talk about mental health and depression, like Kevin Love, DeMar DeRozan, and they both said the same thing. They both NBA players. Kevin Love is very popular, and he said I couldn't open up and talk about this stuff because I could lose money in my career for this. Like because people will think I'm crazy by I'm saying I'm depressed. I got all this money in the world. I'm popular. I'm a icon. I mean, he just said he's like, man, he couldn't open up about it, so he kind of sheltered himself off. Then DeMar DeRozan came out and said the same thing. It's like these people don't. It's man, I told you this before. I had everything I wanted in my life, man. Like it wasn't I didn't get everything the right way, but I had everything I wanted. And I don't know if you read my post. I had more than enough money. This is the moment that hit me right here. I had a lot of money when I was doing all the stuff I told you I was doing. I had a lot of money. I had everything I wanted, the cars. I had the jewelry. I had the women at the time. This is when I first got divorced. I had the women, and I had how you pronounce it? Insomnia. I couldn't sleep.
Yeah.
I would get down. I would leave from messing with a woman, lay in the middle of my bed, and be depressed and can't sleep and be up for days and wonder what's going on with me. And I knew deep down like there's something not right. I'm not happy in life. Like so. That was the beginning of me going to therapy. Like I was like, something's not. I mean, I had everything. What else could I be wanting in life? So it's like I mean, it's a bad thing that you can't really open up to the world yet, like you want to. But at the same time, I appreciate people that do open up. Like I support those people, and I look at them as idols to me. You know, like man, they're not afraid to lose everything to talk about mental health and their clarity. Like it's clear thoughts you have. You know, you want to have.
Right. Man, yeah, that's super interesting. But before I lose it, so I don't want to lose this. So earlier today it's about what you were saying about kids trying to live through their parents. This is wild that this happened. So earlier today I had to shovel snow, right? But before I went to like shovel snow, we kind of had downtime, and my wife was taking a nap, and I was watching The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air on HBO Max. It was the first episode where Will like gets to the house, and he takes Ashley to get a drum set because Ashley doesn't want to play the violin because Uncle Phil likes classical music, but Ashley doesn't. And then Will is like, well, let's play the drums. And Jazz comes over and they like playing the drums, and like eventually like everyone gets fed up with the drums, and Uncle Phil and Will start arguing, and Ashley was like, I don't want to play the violin and I don't want to play like the drums. So like in that case, they were trying to make her like do what they wanted,
Mm-hmm.
but they weren't like focused on like what she wanted. So like that's kind of like that, like it's a fictional show, but like that's kind of like showing like their trauma, right? Like
Yeah.
they're trying, like maybe Uncle Phil always wanted to play the violin or always wanted to be in a classical music band, but he didn't. I think he's a judge in the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, like a lawyer or a judge, and so he was making her do it when she didn't even like she told Uncle Viv, I've never liked the violin, and then she was like, there you go, that explains it. So that's what you were talking about, how like that would be a response to your own trauma that you're now, I mean, and in responding that way, you could be traumatizing your kids.
Like,
Cause
not you could, you more likely are.
so yeah, because they were like, why is my parent making me do this that I don't even like this?
Yeah,
That's
and there's so many stories out there like that. Like, he was a football player for Oklahoma back in the day. His
mm-hmm,
dad, I don't know if you ever heard of the Boss. It's an ESPN 30 for 30. I don't know. His name was the Boss. He was the best college player, like late 90s.
mm-hmm,
His dad programmed him to play football. Like, and come to find out, he hated football. Chris Leak is, I think his name, Chris Leak or Ryan Leaf. Same thing. He was programmed from his parents to play football. And in reality, he didn't want to do it. You
mm-hmm.
like forcing your kids to do something. That's part of your trauma. Is like you want to live your childhood through your kids because you didn't have the childhood you wanted. Like, man, it's so. When I tell you, man, I'm still learning. Like, I'm
Mm-hmm.
still learning, man.
That's
Like,
interesting. So like that's interesting because like what are some ways that you think that like in your opinion, this is, I mean, all of this is your opinion, but this is all super fascinating. So like like we've got parents that traumatize their kids because they're trying to live like vicariously through them, right? But at the same time, it's like you were saying, like society somehow, somewhere, someone or a group of some people decided, oh, men aren't supposed to like talk about their emotions. They have them, we just don't want them to talk about them or something like that, right? What are some ways that you think that like society traumatizes us, in your opinion?
I think we all are at that point where we're forced to grow up too early. Our parents are
That's
so like I don't know how your parents are, but most of our parents, especially where I'm from in my upbringing, most of our parents are so traumatized, mainly PTSD from how they grew up, that my generation was forced to grow up too early. Like I told you about the crack era,
mm,
that's basically PTSD for my mom, my brothers, myself. We're forced to grow up too early because they never got the help they needed with their own traumas. So it's
mhm,
like society is teaching, even we, I think now we got social media.
mhm,
Social media is our influence now. That's not good for mental health. Like my kids
mhm,
don't have social media.
mhm.
Like, but a lot of parents letting their kids have social media or they even making their own accounts at newborns and 1, 2 years old. It's not a bad thing, I don't think, but if you're doing it the right way, it's okay. But a lot of parents are forcing their kids to do this stuff.
Mhm.
Like, I mean, it's. I think it's a trauma response for the most part. Like, I don't know how to describe that part, man. Like, it's just,
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I don't expect you to watch all of my content, but I recently had my philosophy professor, and we talked about fatherhood and we talked about family values, and he said the exact same thing that you just said, that kids are he he said it very similar. He basically said what you just said, that like kids are being forced to grow up way too fast. And
yeah,
he was talking about his own experience. He said, look, he said, fortunately my wife and I, we did our best to let our kid be a kid. He's like, but like I see her friends, and a lot of them I think were forced to grow up way too way too fast. And I think you're right. Like, I think if you're gonna have, I mean, me personally, I'm gonna put my cards out there. I don't think it's smart to let your kids have their own social media account. You know what I mean? Until, I mean, you got to teach them how to use it before you just let them post whatever they want or
What's the
whatever.
biggest issue coming from that? Like, what do you like when you see a 15-year-old kid that been on social media for 3 years? What's the first thing they cop out to when they don't get the likes they have? They cop out to depression. And
Yeah.
they want to kill themselves. And then the parents like, I don't know why they want to do that. They got everything. Well, they got taught at a young age to value what other people think of them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the biggest issue right there is they're going to be depressed the rest of their life. Because they're
Mm-hmm.
going to go through life looking at like, man, this person don't like me. My
Mm-hmm.
spouse don't like me. I'm 30 years old. My spouse just said like they don't like my shoes. So it's like they're gonna be depressed their whole life. There's no coming back from that really. Like you can go to therapy all you want, but if you got social media at 12 years old and you so caught up in how people view you and how they like you. My daughter tried it, man. I didn't know she had social media. She snuck one time and she had it. And when I looked at it, I was like, I explained to her why, like, you not ready for this because it's an ugly world out there, man. Like, it's a
Mm-hmm.
cold world, and I don't want you out there talking about you're gonna kill yourself because you're depressed because people don't like your content.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, it's sad, man. Like, it's our kids are. I'm old school. I feel like I guess I'm old school because I want my kids to be kids.
Yeah.
Like, I want them to grow up not worrying about my problems, or I don't want them to get problems as far as anxiety from me trying to force them to grow up too fast. That's all
Mm-hmm.
anxiety is you not living in the moment. Like
Mm-hmm.
you too anxious for the next thing to happen. That's all anxiety is.
That makes a lot of sense to me. Yeah, like if you're a kid and you're being forced to grow up way too fast, I can see how anxiety would develop because instead of worrying about being a kid and having fun, going to school, learning, right? Learning, most importantly, learning from your parents, right? Because presumably your parents love you. And then on the side, learning in school and everything like that, you're worrying about, I guess, being a teenager or growing up too fast. So yeah, you're not enjoying the moment. Um, this is really so like that was a really. Do you have another one? Because that one was really good. That was like when you said that, that immediately hit me. Like, yeah, society is forcing kids to grow up too fast, and that is cause. But like that's causing that like I feel like that's causing me trauma. Like I don't want like my kid to like feel that they need to grow up just because a bunch of people are expecting
Our
them.
kids are in for it, man. Like man, I'm afraid the world my kids gonna have based on. Well, I will say this: the good thing is
Mm-hmm.
now mental health is being talked about, so I'm pretty
Mm-hmm.
sure there's gonna be more programs coming out of this. There's gonna be more, I guess, checkpoints for kids and young adults and adults to be able to go through and learn about it. But the guy I talked to a couple of days ago, a, a couple articles told you about, he's a counselor at
Mm-hmm.
a high school, and he was telling me about some of the kids he deal with. He was like, they come to him and they like, man, I need a mental break. Like my cell phone, my boyfriend broke up with me over the cell phone. And it's like, he's a high school counselor. And he like, that's sad to hear a 15-year-old kid say they need a mental break because of a
Mm-hmm.
Snapchat message where their boyfriend broke up with them. But
Yeah, they're 15 years old. They should be allowed to
that's crazy.
be a kid. Like, oh man, I'm not gonna. So I'm gonna tell you the truth. So like, I remember that when I was a kid, like this was a few years ago too. When I noticed this, I remember that like when I was a kid, I was really into wrestling, right? Like WWE, which used to be WWF, and like before that, it was like WCW. So one of the things that I had growing up was like I had a lot of wrestling action figures and I would like play with them. I played with my wrestling action figures like until I was a teenager. Like, I'm pretty sure, like, right before high school started, I was still playing with, like, I'm like, one of my favorite wrestlers was like Goldberg and stuff like that, and Sting, the guy like paint his. And I was in middle school still playing with like my action figures and stuff. And a few years ago, I was like, kids don't do that anymore. Like, they think that's for kids, but they are kids. Like, why are you not playing with like action figures because you think it's for kids when you're still a kid? Like, that doesn't make.
Hey, man.
But they
Grow
think they're
up.
too grown for stuff like that. That's just an example. Like, a kid might not be into wrestling, but I
No.
remember I remember me, like, I would still get home from like middle school and like play with my like action figures. And then like once
What did you do? You rode bikes with your friends and hung out outside all night until the lights came on.
yeah, I still did that in high school.
A 12-year-old now, they don't want to go outside. They
Mhm.
don't want to. They don't want to do anything what we consider being a kid. They're more worried about their image now. That's
Mhm.
society forcing our kids to grow up. So it's
Mhm.
like they're gonna deal with lifelong issues with mental health that we don't know where to start at and trying to help them. Like I'm
Mhm.
scared every day for my 13-year-old daughter. Like I'm trying to keep her a kid as long as I can, but she come on. I'm gonna give you an example about what she going through. So I don't want anybody to take this the wrong way. So my daughter goes to, I think it's Hanadiga Middle
Mhm.
School, and she get made fun of because they consider her a straight Abercrombie girl basically because
Mhm.
she's straight. She like boys. Even she's 13 years old. She don't like boys. But most of the girls at her school, they like other women, and they consider her weird and make fun of her because they like you don't like women. You don't dress like us. They dress in goth and stuff, and that's gonna be a lifelong mental issue she's gonna deal with because it's like she getting taught that she's different because she don't like something that somebody else like. So it's
Mhm.
like that's what our kids deal with now. That's peer pressure. That's gonna affect her the rest of her life. She tells me that and she's ready to cry, and I'm like, I mean, how do I explain that to my daughter? Like, you're not doing nothing wrong. You're just being normal, or
Mhm.
whatever I consider to be normal now. You know.
Mhm.
So it's like, what are we teaching our kids now?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I mean, of course, when we were in middle school, there was peer pressure, but this is like something very specific.
Yeah,
This is something like very if
I was shocked when I heard it, man. I was like, wow,
just
like what they have in school now,
mhm.
it's crazy.
That's very specific. It feels very new too, because I'm trying to. I mean, everyone's memory is faulty, including mine, and I'm trying to remember. There was peer pressure to do stuff, but nothing like that. Or like that's not even that's not even peer pressure to do anything. That's kind of like they've identified that she's a certain way or not a certain way, and then after that they're applying pressure on her for not being that way. It's very
It's
that's
weird, man. Like I
that's
don't
too
feel
that's in my opinion, and I'm like you, I'm not an expert. That's too much for a 13-year-old girl to be dealing with.
Man, look, I didn't know how to talk to her about it. I didn't know how to explain.
Mhm.
Um, on the best thing I can do is I'm open about things with my daughter, well, all my kids. I ask my kids how they feel. Ask them is there anything they want to talk to me about. I ask, man, I tell you, it's hard. I give it up to my fiance a lot because it's hard dating somebody that's so in touch about their mental. Like
Mhm.
I want to know how their mental is all the time. I ask them like crazy questions like, mentally, are you good today? Like even
Mhm.
her, like, is there anything you want to talk to me about? Like, how you feel mentally? Like that's what you asked me earlier before we got online. Like that plays in relationships, man. Like most of my conversations is about mental now because it's so.
Mhm.
I look at other people and like, man, I see they're struggling sometimes, and I'm like, do I want to talk to them about it?
Right.
Sometimes I don't, but it's like
It comes it comes from a good place though, right? Because like
yeah, yeah.
because you've dealt with it, and like you don't want your kid that you definitely don't you neither want your kids or your fiance to be in a basement with the lights off, wanting to be shut off from you and wanting to be shut off from their grandparents and their friends and all the, like, what that feel like, so you don't want that on anybody else.
Yeah, it's lonely, man. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's a feeling, like I don't know how to put it into words, man. Like if you dealt with it, you understand, but being in that mental state is real lonely because you feel like you have nobody to open up to. And I don't know if you really want to open up to somebody because then you feel like you're getting judged. I mean, if I would have told somebody at the time 8 years ago, I mean, this is before mental health was even being talked about, really. If I would have told my fiance at the time or my wife at the time, or wherever, man, I'm struggling, I'm in this dark place, the first thing I got to worry about is being in a crazy house. You know, like, so it's like, now it's popular because the celebrities came out and talked about it. But before, you never heard people talking about their mental health and being able to talk about it openly online or on TV. You've seen them in a crazy house or they banished them, you know?
Now that I think about it, is that kind of a trauma response? Like, why is something important to us after a celebrity does it? Like, why can't it be important if, like, oh, Quon says he's struggling with his mental health? Like, why can't that just, why did it have to be, well, not even, I guess, doesn't it usually have to be multiple celebrities that come out?
That's what came out, but you got to think about it like celebrities sell products. So nobody respects anything until a celebrity endorses it. So nobody respects their mental health until they see celebrities openly talking about it. Look at some of the people we grew up on, like, I mean, bad examples. You can just look at like Michael Jackson, Bobby Brown, who else? It's a lot of them, man. Like, you just think of these people, man. When you look back at their life, what were they going? What were they going through? Michael Jackson's a perfect example. He kind of was stuck in a kid mindset because he didn't have a childhood. So that would be trauma.
That's true. Yeah.
Even you watch, he was like he liked hanging around kids, and I don't judge him. I don't know what's true, what's not true, but at the end of the day, he dealt with what he did was basically trauma. He was dealing with trauma. Like, you know, that's not normal for a grown man to want to just hang around kids or start a ranch or anything. Not for me to be able to judge him, but at the same time, it's like, would that not be a trauma to you, like, thinking about that?
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense to me, because it was kind of like you were talking about that great college football player that was
NFL. Oh, college Bob. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was his dad who made him play football, and it wasn't until he was like at the top of his career that they found out this guy doesn't even like football.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that. Like, maybe Michael Jackson didn't even like singing and performing, but he was taught to do that at a young age. He didn't get to be a kid. He didn't get to play with other kids. He didn't get to play with his toys. And now as an adult, it makes sense to me. But like you said, we don't know. Like,
there's plenty of people and athletes like that. There's plenty of celebrities like that. McCogan, whatever his name is, similar. It's, man, I can go on and on. And then even I forgot the guy's name. It's a TV show. It's called Famous Jet Jackson. He was the top of the world. I
used to love that show.
Yeah, he was like maybe a B-list, C-list actor, and he killed himself off depression. Like, I don't know if you remember, he killed himself maybe 6-7 years ago.
I didn't know that he killed himself, but that was a great show. The Famous Jet Jackson. Yeah, he played a superhero. It was a TV show about a superhero, and in the TV show he played the actor that played the famous Jet Jackson. But then he also did solve crime, right?
He solved crime, but I'm gonna give you a better example though.
Okay.
Heath Ledger.
Yeah.
Joker. When he played Joker, got into character so much that he started realizing his own traumas and depression. Yeah, they gave him all the medication, but what happened overall? He killed himself. Like, and that's one of my favorite movies. Like, I love Batman movies for that reason alone, because I think Batman movies talk about society and mental health so much. Like, Joker movie and Batman movies.
Did you see the new Joker?
Man, perfect example. He
All
said
right,
out of truth.
let's do this. Because I watched that movie with my wife, and it opened up a lot of like interesting conversations. So like, what do you like about that movie, The Joker, the new one, where it's like an origin story, right?
A lot of
And
pain truths.
yeah, so give me an example of one.
He talks about, I don't know if you remember the interview. He is like, people want to know if I'm like crazy, but if I open up and say I'm dealing with this and that, y'all gonna say I'm crazy. But if I don't open up, y'all gonna say I'm crazy, basically. Like, I don't know if
I
you remember
do
the
remember that before he shot Robert De Niro.
Yeah. So it's like, it's man, it's so many painful truths. But if you watch all the Batman movies, they all got the same concept. It's
Uh-huh.
about society, how society views everything.
Mhm.
People don't want to know until it's too late. That's why I said, when you go back to that question you asked me earlier, how do you know if somebody really depressed or they're just saying they're depressed? You don't know. But I'm not gonna be the person that judge them. I'm not gonna be the person that say you're not depressed. You just had a bad day. You failing in
Mhm.
life, so you're angry. Nah, I've listened to people because it takes a lot for somebody to say they're depressed or
Mhm.
they're dealing with something. It takes a lot. If people see those signs, man, like you can't be so quick to judge somebody. Those movies are some of the greatest movies ever made, and they got so many painful truths that if you look into the details of them, they mean a lot.
Mhm.
What do you remember from the movie? What's the part you remember the most that opens your eyes a little more?
All right, I'm gonna tell you the truth. I'm gonna tell you. I don't want to lie to you. So, um, like in philosophy, there's like two kinds of schools. There's the way that I describe it is one is analytical, where like you kind of look at what's already out there and you analyze it, and the other one is called like continental, and that's kind of like you're making your own philosophy, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very analytical, so when I watched the movie, I more or less analyzed it, and I was very fascinated with like he didn't seem like a bad guy, right? I mean, he was going through some stuff, but what was like what was weird fascinating to me was like when he fought those kids in the train and he like shot them, he had killed them and then he kept shooting them and then he ran away and like did his little dance. And I was like, what does that mean? And like now that I'm like talking to you about it, like so I mean, I don't know, like now that I'm talking to you about it, like he had a good reason to wasn't he trying to defend a girl in the train?
Yeah, but I mean,
Yeah,
she him as an outcast, basically, though.
yeah, that's true. But now that I think about it, after like because like to me, if you kill someone in self-defense, like I consider that rational, right? Like if somebody attacks you and you think this person is not going to stop attacking me, so I got to kill them, I consider that like rational. So he killed those kids because they were like beating him up. So at that point, to me, that's rational. But then he just kept shooting them after they were dead. And like now that I'm talking to you, I feel like that's got to be a trauma.
I mean, he went
Oh,
through a lot of traumas in that movie. Basically, like
hmm
everything he was going through with his parent, I think, his job, his upbringing, the want to know his dad or whatever, the not being wanted. Then it goes back to heredity, what you said too.
yeah,
I don't know if you remember they put his mom in a crazy house or whatever.
they did. Yeah.
That movie was
Um,
deep, man. It's so many different,
can I
it's
ask you
so
a
many
question?
different open truths.
So you know how like I'm not so you know how like he had that neighbor he had a crush on, and throughout the movie she had a daughter, and like they interacted in the elevator, and it wasn't. I'm gonna when I edit this video, I gotta make sure I say spoiler alerts about the joke because maybe some people haven't watched it. But so you know how like they made it seem like they were in a relationship,
Yeah.
and then it come to find out towards the end that they weren't, like it was all in his mind.
Hmm.
Bro, I thought they were in a relationship the entire time.
And that movie should have won a lot of awards, man.
It
Like,
didn't. It like when I found out that it was all in his mind, I was like, what, like, because I felt like the movie was like, oh, this is the one good thing in his life,
Yeah.
because everything. But then at the end, I found out, man, he had nothing going for him at all.
Right.
Like it was. Oh, do you think he killed her?
I haven't watched the movie in a while, so I don't remember the ending like great, but I'm pretty sure it's been another Joker movie, man.
Yeah. I mean, I can't remember if it was before COVID or after COVID that they announced that they were gonna have a second one.
I know they filming Batman right now because in Chicago, maybe early June. I know some of
Hmm.
the people I follow, they were filming Batman like they was on set. So it's like, but I don't know if you remember the other, even the Heath Ledger Batman movie. Do you remember? Okay, I'll go back to Bane. How he talk
Hmm.
about society and how they view people.
Hmm.
Man, people don't want to acknowledge anybody else's traumas until it's too late.
Hmm.
So it's like, man, like those movies right there are some of the best movies made to me because it has so many hard truths. Like I said, man, like
Okay. Sorry to interrupt. I'm getting really excited. So, um, since we're talking about mental health and movies, specifically the Batman movies and most recently the Joker movie, which was kind of like an origin story. Did you ever watch the Sandra Bullock movie on Netflix that like blew up? It kind of blew up on the internet and they made a lot of memes about it called Birdbox.
yeah.
Was that about mental health?
I don't think it too. From what I remember, I didn't get that from it. I'm like you. I analyze
Mhm.
things, analyze TV shows, movies like crazy.
Mhm.
From remembering that movie, I don't remember it being about mental health.
Mhm.
So like I can't say it was, but I mean, I don't think it was personally because I don't remember it like that. You know.
My opinion was I thought that movie was great. I really liked that movie. My wife really liked it too. She found a Twitter thread where they were making an argument that it was about mental health and how society views people that deal with like mental health.
That's a good
And
point.
and and I remember, but I'm not gonna tell you the truth. I'm gonna tell you the truth again. When I heard that, I was like, no, that's not what that's about. But I don't know. Now that I'm talking to you about it, I'm like, it could be what that
I'm gonna go back
was.
and look at it though.
Hmm. I thought it
I'm,
was
I'm, cool.
I thought it was a great movie, but I didn't when I watched it, like I feel like I was more into the story. I wasn't trying to figure out like what message the people that made the movie were trying to, or what message the story was trying to. I was just into the story. Like I was into like I wanted them to survive and to make it. You know what I mean? Like against the people that um from whatever, like they saw something and once they saw something they went crazy,
Uh-huh.
something like that.
I mean, I can see why. I'm gonna give you another something to think about too.
Hmm.
So you remember like all the celebrities that were like even comedians. I'll give you an example of comedians. Robin Williams,
Yeah.
um, Nick Fairley, I think.
Mm.
Like you remember Nick Fairley? I think that's his
Mm-mm.
name. Nick
Nick,
Fairley.
yeah, yeah, no, I know what you're talking about. The guy, he was on Saturday Night Live, and I think he was a big
Yep.
guy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
these celebrities, they were at the top of their game and they killed themselves because of depression and anxiety and mental health. And that goes where we were talking about earlier, where you couldn't talk about that stuff back then. They say the saying is that most people that are struggling with mental health keep a smile on their face
mm-hmm.
because they're afraid to let people know they're struggling. I've
Mm-hmm.
been there before. Um, I think most people struggle. I think most people don't want people to know they're struggling, so they
Mm-hmm.
smile their pain away. So like if you didn't know me from the outside in, you would think I'm always serious because I talk a lot of serious stuff all the time. I post about a lot of serious things because
Mm-hmm.
I've been in that spot where I have to keep a smile on my face, man. Like it's weird, man. Like I would never want anybody to think don't to hurt themselves because they're afraid to come out and just say, man, I'm struggling.
Yeah.
Like those celebrities, that's why it became popular, I think. Like that's why people start talking about mental health because Robin Williams was a perfect example. And recently the designer, I forgot her name, like I think she did purses or something. She killed herself and she was on top of the world. Like this is like last year or the year before.
Mm-hmm.
And there was somebody else also that year. I forgot who it was. That these
Um,
people at the top and they kill themselves.
I know recently, my wife and I, we like the show called This Is Us, and it's about uh, they were supposed to be triplets, but one of the babies died in utero, or not in utero, like one of the babies died during delivery. And then the parents adopted a little black baby named and they named him, well, at first they gave him the name that the baby was supposed to have, but then they changed his name to Randall. And so they're brothers and sisters, and one of them is like adopted. And like I think right now they're on season 3 or 4, maybe 4. And my wife and I are like invested in this show. Well,
I heard it's a good show.
huh?
I heard it's a good show.
It's a very emotional show. Like, yeah, like me personally, like I've cried in like some of the episodes. And recently I think the writer, the one who wrote she killed herself.
That's crazy.
And the show is like super popular. Like I actually found out about the show in some of the podcasts that I like listened to. They like kept talking about it, and eventually I was like, and my wife mentioned too, like I heard the show is good, and just the combination, I was like, all right, let's watch it. And I got super invested into the show. And then, so I don't even know if the show right now, if she wrote it, or I don't even know who wrote it, but like it was supposed to go on for 6 seasons. It's either on season 3 or 4. And like you said, I mean, if it got signed on for 6 seasons, you would be like, dang, this writer's at the top of her game. And then
it changes then. I mean, it ain't gonna be the same, but you know they kind of keep it similar. But I'm pretty sure if somebody else writing it, it's gonna change a little. But like, did it come out that she killed herself like over depression, anxiety, or anything?
no, I'm not sure why she did. I'll have to look after we finish recording. But I mean, it goes to show, it's like why would she kill herself if like her show is doing
Top of the world.
Yeah, her show is doing great, right? Like I'm sure everyone probably wanted to talk to her, right? Like it's just like the people that did the Joker movie. Like after they released the movie and people watch it, they want to talk to the writers and the directors, and they want to interview them, and they're making money from the ticket sales and the streams and everything like that. I'm sure.
Actually, I forgot what it's called, but they interview like the main actor. I forgot his name, and he talked about the thought process he got to get into. But the 2 other celebrities. Kate Spade was the first lady. I don't know. I heard of her, but I mean, it's a woman's brand she has. She's like super popular. And then Anthony Bourdain, you remember him? The traveling guy that had the TV show on National Geographic. Like he was like top of the world basically, man. Like went somewhere every week. He was a chef. He was a traveler, and I think he retired. And when he was retired, he killed himself. Like NFL players, Junior Seau. I don't remember him. He dealt with CTE. That's another form of mental health. It's so crazy. The NFL player the Chicago Bear player that killed himself a while back over the CTE. Like this stuff is real serious, man. Like it's so new, we still learning, but like that depression and stuff, once that sink in, man, I can honestly say though, the one thing I never had a problem of, because I think my kids and just knowing like how serious it is, I never had in my life a thought of committing suicide or anything like that. But I had moments where I just was like, where do I go from here? Like, why am I so cloudy? Like, I don't smoke weed. So a lot of people smoke to deal with that stuff. I don't like the feeling of it. I drink, but I don't drink crazy. Like it's different vices that people use to hide their pains and traumas. I just choose to learn more about mine instead of vice. I used vices in the past, but at this point, I'd rather learn more about my own trauma than heal from that way, you know?
Yeah, I mean, what's your opinion on that? Like, would you say that because the vices didn't work, that you decided to take it a different route and educate yourself because you didn't want to be constantly living like in this cloudy space, headspace where you didn't know where to go from here and the vices weren't working? Like,
I
what would you?
mean, alcohol, alcohol made me do a lot more things that made my situations worse or made my feelings worse. Is a temporary fix. We made me think too much and
Mhm.
made me too much paranoid. And the way I look at weed now is, I mean, I think weed is the new pill in the
Mhm.
sense like there is modified in the lab. So it's like, I mean, what are they putting in it? So it's
Mhm.
like, is that really helping you, or is that just
Mhm.
what is it doing to you? So
Yeah.
I'm not against somebody that do all that stuff, but I
Mhm.
just choose to learn more about
Mhm.
why.
Yeah.
That's why I go back and say learn my trigger points. I know my trigger points. I can't be around like this. I told you I took off for the whole week for my clients. I had Saturday. Last Saturday was draining for me, man. Like
Mhm.
I had the guy I told to talk to for 3 hours. Had some friends over. Had some good friends over, and I had one of my friends was just. It was a lot of trigger points they did that night, and it made me get back in my mode. And so I had to contact him the next day, and I said, man, I can't be around you no more. Like
Mhm.
you bringing that out of me that I don't want to be. I don't want that person to come out of me anymore. And by
Mhm.
the way you act, you hitting trigger points. And so that's the painful part about learning about your mental health is you're gonna lose people you love. You're gonna lose people you're
Mhm.
close to. And at the same time, you gotta look at your mental health and what those people mean to your trigger points.
Mhm.
So it's like that's a painful truth right there.
Yeah, that is. Man. So I think all of that was fascinating and all of that was great examples. So one of the things that we talked about that you brought up in the last podcast, like you I forgot what question I asked you, but you were like, I believe in God. And then I remember like in one of your posts on Instagram, you said something like prayer is cool or something like that. So what do you like? I mean, what's the connection between like mental health and like in your experience or in your opinion, like me, like I believe in God too, and like for me, like prayer is super important. Like a lot of times when I record content, like I'll pray and like with my son, we always pray with him. We always try to bless our food and we always like pray before he goes to bed. So like how can people that like because our mind, like God gave us our mind, right? Like in my opinion, God gave me my mind and my body. So it's like how can a person that like believes in God like take care of their like mental health, do you think?
Um, I believe in God. I believe in prayer. I believe in spiritual energy. I believe in spiritual realm. I believe in I just believe in I believe in like how to describe it, like not necessarily the energy put out, but I believe in manifesting.
Mhm.
So it's like what you believe is what you're gonna get out of it. Like so, if you
Mhm.
believe, if you negative and you think you can't heal from this type of stuff, you're never
Mhm.
gonna heal from it. Does God play a major role in that? Yeah. Like I mean, I told you last one, I wouldn't be where I am today if I didn't believe in God because
Mhm.
the times I wanted to quit believing in God, I just kept getting blessed. Like even
Mhm.
in the last month, all the blessings I've been getting because I believe that I'm putting out good energy and I believe in the spirit of the world, you know?
Mhm.
So it's like you just, I mean, it's fate basically. Like what you say is I guess wherever you at, no matter where you at in the world, every section of the world have a different name for it. I guess
Mhm.
here we use it as fate
Mhm.
and spirits, but spiritual. But that's how I believe that you gotta go about everything. Like you want to heal, you're gonna heal. You want to learn about it, you gotta be willing to go through the painful truths.
Mhm. Yeah, that makes sense. Man, well, thank you so much for sharing. Um, because like you were saying, like these are it's funny because we're talking and we're using words, but when we describe this stuff, we're like, man, this is a heavy, like
Yeah,
topic. You know what I mean? And like you said, like when you have these discussions on mental health, like it's draining for you, and sometimes you need to take a step back and make sure that your mental health is on point. So I really appreciate it, and I just want to, give you the last word. Is there anything that you think is really important to maybe re-say, or maybe something that you haven't said that's really important for a person like me, or if whoever finds this video, for them to know about mental health?
The biggest thing I can say is, man, it's never gonna be you figure it all out. It's a learning process. Um, it's gonna hurt. Like you're gonna go through moments where you don't even know who you are anymore. But at the end of the day, into the tunnel is light. Like you're not alone. Like we all dealing with this stuff. Some people just more open to learning and accepting the fact that they're not perfect. Like we're all dealing with some form of trauma, whether it be a breakup trauma or a parenting trauma or it's more serious things out there, more serious traumas, but it's all some form of trauma. So best thing I can say is, man, be open to help, be open to learn.
Quon, that's great, man. Like I don't even know what to say to that. I like just the way that you started off. Like you're never gonna figure everything out. Royal Living. Want to tell us about Royal Living before we sign off?
My brand, Royal Living. I should be launching everything fully. I'm pushing for March. I have a problem with trying to be a perfectionist with everything. So all the stuff I have ready to drop, I get more ideas. I'm like, it's not ready yet. It's not ready yet. I had a big brand dropping for my mom. So a big line dropping for my mom based on some PTSD, kind of some depression, kind of. So it's like I am dropping. I will drop before the summer, like a major release. But for the most part, I'm just working, man. Like I plan on having a great 2021. I learned a lot this year about myself. I learned a lot about my brand, and my whole brand, Royal Living, is based on mental health and making sure you living good mentally, physically, spiritually, all aspects of life. That's why it's called Royal Living.
So Mr. _Royal Living on Instagram and Quon Denny on YouTube.
Yeah.
And people can keep connected with you there until you drop the new Royal Living merch.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yep. And I'm trying to get this podcast up the line. Try to get it out there more. I got more YouTube videos I'm ready to drop. I want to wait till the new year I want to get consistent on it in the new year. So I'm working it. It's a process. Like, you got your podcast. I can rush everything, but it's not the way I want it to be. So I'm going to take my time. I'm going to keep learning, but I will put the content out there, and I plan on having a great 2021.
Okay, Quon Denny. Everyone look out for Quon's podcast. Until then, connect with him on Instagram and on YouTube. He's got new YouTube videos coming out. He's got a podcast coming out. If you want consistent information on what he's learned about mental health, a lot of his story on Instagram every so often is about mental health. So you can tune into his story to learn about that. Quon, thank you so much. And I hope that you enjoyed this as much as I did, and I hope that you.
Oh man, I appreciate you having me, man.
Of course, and I'm excited for 2021 for you. It sounds like it's going to be. Especially after a year like this, everybody. This is. I think this is going to cause trauma for a lot of people. The type of year, and a lot of stuff was out of their control.
Yeah, it was a great year for me, man. Like, surprisingly, I learned the most I ever learned about myself this year. Like, I go by Mr. Perseverance a lot, and things that came out of this year was all about perseverance, man. So I had a great year. Like, it's sad that all the things that happened, I just kept my head up and kept fighting. But now I'm gonna springboard into next year.
All right, my guys and my girls, I hope that you enjoyed that episode with Quon Denny. Super grateful that he was able to join me again. If you haven't watched our previous podcast, it was about fatherhood and his experience with family court. This time, He shared everything that he's learned and his experience with mental health. If you've made it this far and you haven't subscribed, please subscribe for more conversations like these. I invite guests on here that have an important topic like this one, because this is about sharing things that are valuable and significant to me, so that hopefully you can learn about them and you can decide for yourselves. You can think about it and you can decide, is this something that I want to incorporate in my life, in my philosophy of life? So subscribe, hit the bell. If you're listening on the podcast apps, make sure you follow the Spotify podcast and subscribe to the Apple podcast or wherever you're listening to the podcast. The link to support the Dani Flo Podcast financially so that I can improve the podcast is below. Please consider that. But the most important thing that you can do, or something that's just as equally as important, is sharing the video if you like the video, so that our Dani Flo Podcast philosophy of life party can increase. Until the next episode, my guys and my girls, aka my dear and beloved Dani Flo, is remember what Venerable Archbishop Fulton J. Sheen taught us: your life is worth living. Love you, my guys and my girls. Bye.